Welcome to another edition of the Corner Booth Podcast here from the Snowdon Deli. I'm Aaron Rand from CJD, along with Bill Brownstein of the Montreal Gazette, and our special guest today, Jennifer Crane, founder of Connexion Stratégies and a political strategist, and you recognize Raphaël Melançon, founder of Trafalgar Stratégies and a political analyst now in Nouveau and CTV. Welcome both.
And the Gazette, by the way. He has a terrific column.
And the Gazette,
yes.
Local newspaper.
Yes.
All right. Listen, we were talking about this the other day. So the Provincial Liberal Party has a new leader. Pablo Rodriguez has been anointed. And a lot of people look at this and go, well, we think back to the Anyone But Pablo movement. That's over and done with. His job is obviously to reunite the party first because there's some fractures within the party. But then you brought up a point, Raphael, in a column you wrote in the Gazette about this perhaps opening the door to having sovereignty lead the way in the next provincial election, which is really only about a year away. Why do you think that?
Well, we heard Rodriguez during his victory speech last Saturday mention sovereignty, using sovereignty as any liberal leader would do, of course, using sovereignty as a scarecrow to tell people basically your refuge. If you want an alternative that is not an alternative to the CEQ that is not sovereignist, we are your only option. So come back to the Liberal Party. So of course, Rodriguez wants Paul Saint-Pierre as much as possible to talk about sovereignty, because whenever the PQ talks about sovereignty, since there's no appetite for sovereignty within the population right now, sovereignty hovers around, 35% maximum right now. So there's a big bunch of people here to attract to the Liberal Party, because 60% of the population, if not more, don't want to hear about it right now. So there's an interesting pool of people here, of voters to go and reach out to, and certainly Rodriguez wants Paul Saint-Pierre to talk as much as possible about his commitment to have a referendum on his first term if ever he becomes premier, because that would serve the Liberal Party, because people would be turning to the Liberals if they want to avoid having a referendum.
Do you think he said that as a trap for Paul Saint-Pierre Plamondon?
It could be a trap indeed, because...
Yeah, but on the other hand, I think it's going to be quite the opposite. I'm thinking PQ loves this. Who would they prefer to have had as a candidate to head the Liberals? I mean, certainly not the other Blackburn or Milliard.
Certainly, because he's seen as a staunch federalist.
Absolutely, a Trudeauite and all the rest.
Trudeau, closely associated to Justin Trudeau. So I mean, for the PQ, and also I would say for Legault and the CEQ, Rodriguez is probably the candidate they prefer.
Oh, absolutely.
Because it's playing to their advantage, sir.
I can already imagine the advertising going up around him.
Whenever Rodriguez is going to talk about the management of public finances, he's going to be reminded that he was part of the government that doubled the national debt on the federal stage. Whenever he's going to talk about immigration, he's going to be reminded that he was part of that government that mismanaged the Roxham Road situation. So he's easy to attack. He's an easy target for the PQ and the CQ.
And he's a very jovial kind of guy. But Jennifer, there was a column in Journal, Monsieur Mario Dumont, said that Pablo Rodriguez is a great thing for the Liberals, which I found odd because I had heard rumors that Mr. Dumont wanted to take over the CAQ if in fact Legault was going to leave. But he thinks that it's going to strengthen the Liberal Party. I don't know if that was a tactic.
It could have been a tactic. I don't necessarily know that it will strengthen the Liberal Party, because the provincial Liberal Party right now finds itself where the federal Liberal Party found itself about 15 years ago in third place, and that was caused by infighting, not accepting leadership results and stuff like that. Now, what we've seen with the PLQ so far is that they're not doing that. And we saw yesterday or the day before, Charles Miard, encouraged the troops to get all behind Pablo and all that. I hope, for Pablo's sake, that he doesn't end up having, infighting within the party, because that's how you end up in oblivion. And I agree with Raph, what you said. You can't own part of the Trudeau legacy, the organization, and winning. And I mean, that was Team Trudeau. That wasn't Pablo that won in Quebec. Let's just be. You can't own part of it and not own the rest of it. So as you alluded to, Raph, Roxham Road, the debt, the immigration situation.
He has a background to defend.
Yeah, and you don't just walk across the Ottawa River and everybody forgets about things. And I think it seems to me that was a little bit of what Pablo was the image that he was trying to do. And it's like you can't say one thing in English and another thing in French. You can't say one thing federally and another thing provincially. We pay attention.
It's been done before.
It's been done before, and people notice. People like us pay attention, right, guys?
But he tried to do that this week, though. He said that, just watch me, because I was part of a government, and as a minister, I had to be Ministerial solidarity. You have when the decision is taken, you have to abide to it, or you leave. And he didn't leave, obviously.
Yeah.
He remained there, and he was the Quebec lieutenant of Justin Trudeau. But still, he says, now I'm the leader, so I'm the one who makes the decisions. And we'll have to wait and see if he goes in another direction. But so far, it seems to me that it's rather the federal Liberals taking over the provincial branch or the provincial Liberal Party, and it's I would say there's a yellow flag here because since Jean Lesage in the 1960s, this party has always taken pride of making sure that it's not perceived
Right.
as the branch of the federal Liberals, and this could blur the situation here in the minds of a lot of Quebec voters. There could be no more distinction between the federal Liberals and the provincial Liberals.
Yeah, which is something the opposition
Rodriguez.
is obviously going to try to keep pointing out over
Yeah.
and over again because you might as well. If I can go back, just reaction, if you will, to Pablo Rodriguez winning this. Were you surprised that he won?
Well, I was surprised. He didn't win as solidly as he thought he was going to win. And if it had gone maybe a few votes more, it would have been Charles Millard. I think probably a lot of people would have preferred. I know most people that I know who are Anglos voted for Charles. I just hope, in the case of Pablo, one of the things he doesn't import from the federal Liberals is to treat the English-speaking community as the party wallet, and then we're expected to turn. Oh, we didn't notice you're putting a knife in our back. I heard Pablo on the radio the other day talking about C13, not C13, rather Bill 96, and the notwithstanding clause and everything like that. But he was part of a caucus that put that into C13. So I don't understand why it's terrible now when it wasn't terrible 2 years ago. So Pablo, I think, really needs to have a fulsome conversation with the English-speaking community of Quebec because he really doesn't understand. And to suggest that there's no native English-speaking community in Quebec from somebody whose family showed up in the eastern townships, for me, I find it really off-putting. And I think he owes a lot of explanations for some of the things he said when he was a federal
But
cabinet minister.
what's interesting is he got way more support than anybody else from actual a liberal MNA member. I mean,
They're all on the island of Montreal.
yeah, but still, Blackburn got none. Milliard
He came
got
too
about.
late. He came too late in
Yeah.
the race.
Yeah.
Remember, he had
Blackburn
issues.
came,
Blackburn came too late in the race, and already most MNAs had given their support to either
Right.
Milliard or Rodriguez. So he came too late in the race to be able to turn things around for him. But I would say the surprise, to answer your question, the surprise, I agree with Jennifer here. The surprise to me was not that Rodriguez won, was the weakness of his vote. He came 2.7 points from losing that.
Right.
From losing the victory, and whereas he was the most known candidate of all. And on the other side, you have someone who was practically unknown to the general public just less than a year ago, Charles Millard, who got 47.7% of the vote. So 2.3 points difference. That to me was the big surprise of that leadership race.
It's interesting as you say that. I think to myself, Charles Millard, the new face, young guy, financial background, looks the part. I mean, he's got a lot going for him. He's very personable. Yet, at the end of the day, these MNAs that Bill just mentioned that are here are supporting Pablo. You thought perhaps because most of them are fairly young as well, right? They haven't been around that long. But the support wasn't for Charles Millard, it was for Pablo. Is some reason why you think that would have happened or did happen?
Well, I think that it was kind of like a bit of a pull. Like it was a kind of a FOMO thing among the MNAs, and maybe some threats. Maybe I know the way Pablo does business in politics. Maybe you're going to get this, you might not get that, whatever. What surprised me? I've done many leadership races. Their numbers only doubled. I think they only topped out at like 20,000 people.
Right.
And it'd be really nice
Yeah.
to see where those members were signed up. And I looked at the way the rules went, and Charles Millard really was following the rules. He was all over the province. He was doing everything,
Great
and signing
campaign.
up the young people. And going back to what we talked about a minute ago, about the sovereignty threats and stuff, that's not the way to attract young people to the Liberal Party. They don't want to be the politics of fear and stuff like that. So I think a new narrative surrounding the sovereignty question or whatever that is not fear-based will help them to maybe attract the younger.
Well, did you see he just Pablo Rodriguez appointed his new the head in his point person in the National Assembly, Rawa Risky. Marwa Risky just announced today or yesterday, which is kind of interesting because she told us she was done with politics. She was going to have a baby, and
Right.
because everybody thought that she would be the next Liberal leader way back when, but now all of a sudden she's thrust back into the middle once again, which I found kind of interesting.
good.
She's very
She's a good pick. I mean,
yes,
she's a
but the
great-
point is that
And
she
she's
was
still not going to be here to run in the next provincial election. I mean, this is just an interim appointment, right? So
exactly.
But
I'm not sure what
it's
that
interesting
says.
though that she would get involved, like when she gave the impression that she
Yeah.
just was done for a while.
Right, but at the same time, it's her opportunity to show what she's capable of doing as leader,
Right.
as parliamentary leader, and then maybe take some time for her to take care of her kids, and eventually come back
Yeah.
in 1 or 2 terms, eventually 8 years maybe, and make a great comeback whenever Pablo is going to leave as leader of the Liberal
Go
Party.
back to the
So-
federal party.
maybe we'll see then. But I would say that to answer your question, Aaron, why did they support massively Pablo? I would say there's a lot of opportunism there because they would look at the polls and he was the one leading throughout
From
the
the
race.
get-go, right.
But it was a notoriety contest. The reason why he was leading in the polls mainly it's because people in general, liberal supporters, had no clue who Charles Milliard was, neither Carl Blackburn.
Right.
Rodriguez is very well known because he's been in the news every single week since the past 10 years, if not more, under Justin Trudeau. So, of course, that's one of the reasons
Well,
why
remember,
I
Denny
see-
Coderre was also very high in the polls until he got
Exactly,
booted out of the race.
And yet, that doesn't mean he was a good candidate.
No, but in terms of popularity, I mean, at a certain
Well,
point,
name
he was number
recognition,
one.
right? I mean, Denny Coderre, Pablo Rodriguez, probably the two with the most rating.
Yeah.
So maybe not a surprise from that perspective.
Right.
I would ask, I'm thinking of like hypothetically, maybe fair, maybe not fair. Carl Blackburn decides not to run, right, and doesn't get involved. And now it's Pablo Rodriguez and Charles Milliard, and Bélanger and Mario are not going to win this thing. Does it turn out differently if it's just the two of them, do you think?
Absolutely.
Yeah?
Absolutely. Because I think that a lot of the regional vote was split between Charles and Carl. Pablo had a lot of the support on the island of Montreal, but the way it was like a formula. They needed weighting in the regions and different things. It was like 8 regions or whatever. I won't get into the details, but they had the regions, and Pablo did not have the regions. So if Carl had desisted, and if you look, there was a list of supporters of Carl Blackburn. He didn't have a lot of current MNAs, but he had a lot of past MNAs
Yeah.
and former ministers and different people in the regions, and a little bit in Montreal. He was going for the conservative, the federal conservative crowd. He had a federal organizer. So I mean, yeah, it could have been quite different. And when leadership races are that close, you need a little bit of internal. They're going to need to talk about that as a group. I do hope that Pablo is going to reach out to both Charles and to Carl and I think he has indicated that he will do that, to bring everybody together, because the last thing that the party needs is any type of split,
Right.
because they'll just be in oblivion. And Pablo should know that because he's been in the federal situation with me when we were in oblivion. It wasn't fun.
But Jennifer's right. Carl Blackburn coming into the race split the vote for Charles Milliard, and kind of the momentum shifted because when he came into the race, Milliard was just picking up support, just like that. And he was probably going to beat Pablo on the finish line, at the finish line. And in the end, indeed, it split the vote. It split the vote of the regions. It also split the vote of those who wanted to see the Liberal Party go back to its more economic, past. The values that have made the success of that party under Jean Charest and Robert Bourassa. So these were two visions, two different ideological currents that were battling in this leadership race. So on one side, you have the more federal Trudeau-style liberalism, and on the other side, you have the more Charest-Bourassa-style provincial liberalism that were battling for the future of this party. And in the end, it
Well,
seems
especially
like
now, given
federal
the
liberalism.
economy becoming such a big issue with the U.S. and Trump, you'd think that would have been a focus. Obviously it's worked up until now. Maybe helps with looking at the numbers, at the declining numbers that the
Well,
CAC
you'll
is
recall,
dealing
though,
with.
that when Pablo got into the race, the federal liberals were tanking, and a lot of people suggested he just wanted out.
Abandoned ship.
He abandoned ship to get into a power position here. There was an awful lot of skepticism back then. I'm sure you felt it, you heard it. And now, like, he's the boss, and Carney's Liberals are doing really well. So it's interesting. I wonder if he would have changed his mind.
Maybe a bad move. Maybe he regrets. I don't know. He's not going to regret until the next election.
Right.
But if he loses the next election and he sees what's happening on the federal stage, maybe he might regret it. Who knows?
Jennifer, give me a take on this. So you've worked as a political strategist, right? Pablo Rodriguez is in a government. The government's tanking at the time under Justin Trudeau. he makes a decision to leave. Not just him, others decided to do the same. Bad idea, good. I mean, forget about the fact that he's running, because obviously he had a plan, which was to run here. But the idea of leaving when he did, figuring that, you know what, I'm done, I got to do something else. Right. How's that come about?
Well, it's interesting because two other people said the same thing, and then they came back, and both of them are now cabinet ministers, right?
Yeah.
So, in the case of Pablo, what I'm interested in, you're talking about the next election, but he hasn't even indicated where he's going to run. In the case of Charles Mignard, he said, I'm going to run in Orford. Okay, great. The island of Montreal, there's the safe seats are pretty much all taken. I mean, he's not going to run somewhere where he could possibly lose. So I would.
And you don't want to be the Montreal guy once again, because you want to reach out to the region.
Right.
So
But where then? Where will he go?
Probably around Sherbrooke, because he often repeats the fact that he's originally from there. So that's part of his narrative. So I would see him run maybe in the Eastern Townships. We know that Mignard is going to run in Orford, right?
Orford, yeah.
So maybe around Sherbrooke. I would see Rodriguez run there.
Saint-François, maybe.
Maybe, who knows? But to go back to your question, Aaron, what we heard, the rumors back then, is that Rodriguez was also thinking about running for mayor of Montreal. He was considering that idea. There were strong rumors.
Doing the Melanie Jolie thing.
Melanie Jolie, and I think that he would have been a very strong candidate facing someone like Cabouin.
Actually, you're quite right.
And probably a better candidate than the one Ensemble Montréal has right now to face Cabouin. So maybe the decision as a strategist, if I were his advisor back then, I would have told him maybe you should rather consider municipal politics, because you're closely associated to Montreal. You would be a very strong contender for the mayor of Montreal.
If you were to run.
It worked for, no, absolutely.
The Corner Booth podcast is brought to you in part by the Snowdon Delicatessen, where we are. 75 years in business, the hub of Montreal's greatest smoked meat, plus Carnotzel, potato latkes, and the famous Snowdon Deli party sandwiches. That's the Snowdon Delicatessen.
And speaking of municipal politics, we haven't seen the mayor in a long time. She's leaving the scene. A new guy's coming in. In terms of opposition, I mean, it just seems like everybody thought that they would be turf projet, but ensemble, what do you think their likelihood of success is?
It depends on their level of organization, because one of the things that a lot of people don't realize is there are 103 elections that happen. There's the big one, but there's 102 other elections that happen on the island, and in Montreal itself. And everybody's voting.
City councillors, it's borough councillors, so 103 people to get elected
just in
as
the
part
island.
of your team.
Right. And so you have to focus. You've got to get all of those candidates. You've got to get campaign finance set up. Money to pay for those pancartes, and your things, the flyers they leave around, and that's just in Montreal. So we're not even talking about Westmount and the other parts. So I know that they've been doing some math, but Projet Montréal has realized, going back a number of years, what they have to do to win those smaller races. I mean, if you look at LaSalle, for example,
buses, not bikes.
Yeah, well, there's some things. They harnessed the union vote. They figured out what they need to do. They figured out the math, and then they've been able to creep out it further and further, like LaSalle and out in
they've built a strong base too that's mobilized.
Absolutely.
It's rare that we see that in municipal politics, to have a party that's strongly organized. Usually on the municipal stage, people would vote for any candidate they like, but Projet Montréal is an exception here. So I agree with you.
Yeah, and their finance is solid. So basically, every year they'll go back to the same people who will give the same maximum amount of money. This is all in the public record, and it's reliable, and these people will come out to vote. When in 2017, when we were hearing about the advanced polls, people showing up to vote in the pouring rain, I'm going, that's not our votes. They're not showing up to vote for Denis in the pouring rain.
But it was a very light voter turnout. It always is, but they managed to get the Plateau and Mile End. They come out in droves, and the rest are very apathetic.
Well, but they know what they have to do to get that person elected, and they'll just find the way to get the bare minimum, and they've got the people out. It's shocking, the turnout in municipal politics. I do hope that we can make people more interested in our conversation. But November, everybody's voting. 1,100 municipalities in Quebec.
But the locomotive that drives these trains is always the leader. And here I see on one side you have Le Cabouin, who's been the president of the executive committee of the City of Montreal. So the city is number 2 for many years now, who's solid. And he's going to be facing someone who's pretty new to municipal politics. Well, fairly new. Well, she's been a city councilor.
She was a councilor.
But still, she's new as leader. She's new. She's not very well known amongst the general public. And within the next few months, it's going to be a huge task to get people to know her. You have to have, Valérie Plante was completely unknown. Remember in 2017 when she came to municipal politics facing Denis Coderre, everybody said there's no chance she's beating Denis Coderre, And then she came up during the summer with this advertising campaign, L'homme de la situation, the man for the job. And everybody all of a sudden was talking about her. Yeah. And then Coderre stumbled and people were looking for an alternative. And they turned to her, they turned to Projet Montréal, not necessarily because people wanted to vote for her, but people wanted to get rid of Coderre.
Right.
So unless there's a strong movement right now to get rid of Projet Montréal, which we don't feel at the moment.
Well, to what you're saying, though, Raph, they can take a page out of that same playbook, right?
They could.
And there was an ombudsman report that came out this week showing all the terrible things that have been going on in Montreal, complaints about literally everything. Seems to me if you're the opposition, there's your playbook. Look at this. This is what you have for the past 4 years or 8 years.
Absolutely. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying everything's bright under the sun with Projet Montréal. That's not my point. Not at all. I think if you look back at the past 8 years of Valérie Plante, there's not much. What has she done? What has she done?
Close the mountain road.
Yes. Bike path. In my area, in my neighborhood, I live in Villemar. In my neighborhood, they've probably spent millions redoing all those sidewalk corners to add just a few plants at the corner of every street. But beyond that, what's the bilan of Valérie Plante? In terms of homelessness, it's even worse than it was. Yeah. In terms of housing, it's even worse than it was when she came to power.
And construction's even worse.
They've put in place bylaws that are killing the housing market right now instead of helping property developers build more units so that we can have enough units to house everybody in the city. So the city is not going well, but at the same time we have to have a strong leader and also a strong, well-organized party. I agree with Jennifer on that. Well-organized party that gets its message through to the population, to voters in Montreal. And so far, I haven't seen Madame Soraya Martinez, the new leader of Ensemble Montréal, I haven't seen her doing that. She is not really communicating efficiently. It doesn't seem to be picking up. So they're going to have to change their strategy eventually so that they can get her.
Maybe they can incorporate an orange cone into their ad campaign. Use that.
Have there been polls, municipal polls? I don't recall.
I don't think people are interested right now. So if people are not interested,
I haven't heard anything on that front. What kind of support she has compared to...
We're going to hear about it, I think, starting in August. Much more.
Yeah.
And are we going to see a surprise candidate show up at any time? He asked about David Hertel.
Of course he did.
The elephant in the room.
The elephant in the room. Well, the thing is, no matter, even if David were to come in or somebody else, and even if Raph suggested he wanted to run, let's say Raph wants to run for men.
You want to come with me?
Sure.
Let's do
it. We know how to organize
the men for the job.
Right?
Okay. All right.
But there's still those other 102 elections that I was talking about. So, if let's say we'll give NDG as an example. NDG, you run. You want to be able to pull the NDG district vote, the mayoral vote, and then you're going to run for then a different mayor. It's really iffy. You kind of need a party. Denis didn't want to have a party. Yeah. That was a big problem that we had in 2013. Finally realized, I kind of need a party. Not just like a fundraising shell, because those are the.
You're going to be isolated as the mayor against the municipal council if you don't have a team on your side to vote. On your projects and then on your vision, then you're going to be alone, and you're going to be a lame duck mayor. Basically.
So you're making the case that's unlikely to happen.
Well, if he does, let's say David Hertel runs. Well, it's getting pretty late right now because he needs to build a team, an organization, raise funds, and at $200 per person, you have to be a resident of the city of Montreal to give to the party, and it's $200 maximum. It's capped on electoral years. Okay. So, to build a substantial fund,
it's a challenge.
It's quite a challenge. So you have to recruit candidates, 103 candidates, 102 plus the mayor. It's a huge task that you're going to have to do within the next
And the election is October.
4 or 5 months. So
November 5th.
The clock is ticking. The clock is ticking right now for anyone who wants.
Bill is going to announce he'll be running for David in Westmount.
If only I could, yeah.
In Westmount.
I have one. We're going to have to wrap up in a sec. I want to go back to one thing we didn't talk about with respect to Pablo. And that's a thing that, of course, is always going to be the problem for the Liberals, especially now, the regions. You have someone in Pablo, and obviously everyone recognizes this. He's talked about it as well. How do you win? Can a guy like Pablo Rodriguez win that or convince people in the regions who, again, look at his background as a federal minister, former federal minister? Does that work? Can he make that work, do you think?
I think he can. I think what he should try to do is bring in somebody like Charles and have almost like an ambassador of the regions. He's already indicated that he's going to go into the regions, but he's got to really walk the talk, go into the regions, talk to people, have somebody responsible for the regions. I mean, they don't have a big caucus, so I would say you can't put somebody for each region because we're, AR6, Montreal, that's one, and he's got, of course, Monsieur Fortin in the Pontiac, but those are like a couple of regions, and then, of course, Madame Nichols off the island. So the caucus grew by one, but find a real regional point person, even before the election, to really engage the regions, understand the regions, inform, and show that he's willing and open to learning about the regions. He doesn't know everything, and that's the way to go.
I think he needs a Carney moment. Like basically what propelled Carney to power is like discovering a loophole like with tariffs very, very easily. But he has to get up on board too, protecting Quebec economy and all the rest, jumping into it and taking a whole other tack that has been taken. And I'm waiting for that to happen. I'd be surprised. Do you think that's in the cards?
I would say one of the keys for him to win in the regions will be to recruit star candidates in those regions. And right now would be the right time to recruit because if you look at the latest polls, he's polling pretty high right now. So it's a good time for him to reach out to regional stars, saying people, let's say, mayors who are well known in their region or people who are from the business sector, very active in their region. Now is the time to recruit those star candidates because a star candidate can make maybe a 5-10 point difference. And if the vote is split between the Liberals, the PQ, and the CQ in certain ridings, that could serve the Liberals in the end. So I think his key to winning will also be to recruit, and it shouldn't be the party of a single man because he's so closely associated to Montreal. And also, I would say in the regions, let's not forget that people tend to be generally more nationalists.
Yeah.
So he has to prove that he's no longer the federal Liberal minister, that he is now the leader of the provincial Liberal Party and that he will stand up for Quebec. Yes, Quebec within Canada, but still Quebec first. And that is something, that's going to be a huge task to change the perception amongst certain nationalists who left for the CQ since 2018 and that he needs to bring back to the Liberal Party because he can't win without the Francophone nationalist vote, he can't win without the regions vote and hope to be the next premier of Quebec.
He has to focus more on economy, I think, if he wants to make any kind of headway. That worked so well for Carney, and
unless the ballot question is sovereignty.
Then it's a whole other.
Or he could just get Donald Trump to say something bad about him, which would encourage him to support him. Just another option. I want to thank you both for being with us, Jennifer Cray and Raphaël Melançon. We'll see you again soon for another edition of the Corner Booth Podcast.